What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Free Speed Podcast, your go-to podcast for navigating fitness and life with purpose. We're your host, Cal.
And I'm Tash.
And today's episode is about what makes a great coach. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today, and I told Tash I wanted to talk about this, is for one, I've been doing an internship at the University of Texas the last month and a half now. And that's been my only focus, is learning and surrounding myself with some of the best coaches in Division I sports. And not only that, I've seen a ton of people on social media recently getting injured, and not saying that that is always coach related, but I do think a coach always plays a role in some form of what an athlete is doing and or what they're not doing, and maybe they need a coach or a better coach or to change something. And so today I wanted to talk about what makes a great coach and just tell stories about what makes bad coaches and understanding like the ins and outs of why these athletes have started to get injured. Because to name a few of them, especially in the high rocks and the triathlon and hybrid space, I've seen a ton of people getting stress fractures or stress injuries from overuse or just trying to do too much. And we kind of touched on this last episode.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I feel like people, get injured all the time, but I feel like especially in the last couple months, it's been all I see over social media. And I think a big part of that is just honestly down to overtraining. And I feel like a lot of social media influencers who are also kind of athletes glorify this overtraining, training split. And realistically, the normal person who's working 9 to 5 doesn't train as much as them, but still probably, can reach the same goal. So it's kind of just crazy when your job is to exercise and work out. Maybe a lot of people take it a little bit too far. And
I think the reason that they take it too far is because we live in this new age world where we have people who can do online content for a living. And so instead of maybe what people used to do, which is like have a normal job and then train on the side, now people have way more time to spend training. So in like 20 years ago, when social media didn't exist, people couldn't just like be online content creators. So they had to work usually like 40 hours a week, 9 to 5. And so by definition, there's no way you were getting in as much training volume because you didn't have as much energy. And so I think because people are now like these social media athletes, you see more often than not them booking more races. And so even after like they get a huge half marathon PB, next thing you know, they're signing up for a marathon a month later. And instead of doing maybe 3 or 4 races a year, they're doing like 10 to 12. And so now you're just increasing the likelihood of your risk. And I really think that's the important thing about today's topic is I also want to be very clear. Any high level athlete or any athlete at any level, but especially at the highest level, usually when you're hitting plateaus or kind of nearing closer to your ceiling of your potential, you are trying to make small little changes to your training to get better. And I think at the end of the day, the progressive overload approach, if you think about progressive overload as the way to ultimately get better, get faster, get stronger, is to either add more weight or do it for longer, that will eventually lead you to an injury. If you just run 100 kilometers a week and then 150 or 200, 300, like there's a point at which your body will break. And I think that's important. It's like injury, it makes sense because our concepts that we have in place tell us that that's the way we need to get faster. And I think that's where the root of the issue is we know that we need to slowly, incrementally build volume. But every person and every human is different at which they break. Everyone's breaking point is different, and it takes time or sometimes injury to figure that out. And like Tash, you kind of figured that out when you had that ankle issue, I think, like in
Mhm.
September, is you knew that you were kind of nearing a point that your body couldn't handle it.
Yeah. It was post-marathon, and I think the amount of volume and how hard I had pushed maybe was starting to, like, almost degrade my body a little bit, if that makes sense. Um, but I didn't necessarily get injured, but I found it, like, kind of hard to get back into running after the marathon, and then, obviously, my injury wasn't specifically from a run that I did. It was because I was wearing, like, non-supportive shoes at work, and I kind of just, like, overused it. Um, so in that sense, it was a little bit different, but yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just an interesting time that we live in now where like people are they know they know what they need to do to also reach these goals. And so you've seen a big wave in the last year of people who want to go sub 3 hour in the marathon. And like what happened to just why are all PRs like based on fixed times like 105 then 110? And it's like being consistent, just being able to execute consistently is for one, probably a pretty good win. And then two, like a 30-second or a minute PR, like those are also huge, huge wins. And the best way to look at it is like the amount of power or the amount of effort or work it takes to do any competition can be measured in an output. So like watts. And so if you look at your average watts, and this is getting very into the weeds, just by being able to increase that just a little amount is an exponential amount of increase. And what I mean by that is like going from a 7 minute 2K on a rower to a 6:30 isn't isn't the same amount as going 6:30 to 6 minute. It's an exponential jump in the amount of power you have to output. And that's kind of what I mean by like any sort of race is it becomes that much more difficult the faster you go to shave off time in a racing sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
What's your opinion on all these influencers signing up for race after race after race after race? Because to a point, I think it's inspiring, and I like to some people, they see them and like, okay, maybe I want to try that, and it could get someone into that space who hasn't maybe done it before. But I'm wondering, like, do you think that people that have a social media influencer job, do they have more of a like a likelihood of not getting injured and being able to race that many times a year just because they have more time? Or do you think that the human body just literally cannot, like, put up with that much volume no matter what,
uh,
even if it's their full-time job?
I think the biggest thing is it depends on your background, number one, and it depends on how much time you put into recovering. And I heard this very, very recently, and everyone talks about like how much time you spend on doing like the little things and recovery. And that's honestly like where you're going to get further ahead at the highest level is like everyone can do the same training, but if you're way more recovered because you're getting way better sleep and you're doing the mobility and the stretching and the release and like whatever is tight, it's going to end up stacking you so much further ahead. But like I had said, if you are new to running, then you need to also trust the process that it's going to take years. It's going
Mhm.
to take years to get to a level of an Olympic caliber volume, which is absurd. Like some of these guys have been running since they were like 10. And so they've been doing 100+ kilometer weeks for years and years and years. Just because you have all the time in the world, like I said last time, bone only adapts a fifth of the speed as your muscle. And so you need to give it a lot more time and be a lot more meticulous about when you're increasing. And I think that's what I've noticed recently. And I put a story up this week about how, like, I'm going to stick with 65 kilometers a week, 60 to 65, because I find I perform my best around that 60 to 65. And don't get me wrong, if eventually in a couple years I can withstand more volume, then I'll probably be able to get faster. But at this point, any more will actually do worse for me than better than good. And it's more about being more strategic in programming exact sessions properly than, and that's what I mean about being a good coach. Is a great coach knows when how to program a schedule around what time and availability you have. And I think a lot of people think, oh, like these influencers, they have all this time to recover, and yeah, okay, it's a bit of a head start, but I guarantee you there's a lot of athletes. And just keep in mind, a lot of them are getting injured. And if you're not injured, if you're staying healthy, you're going to be a lot further ahead if you just keep on chipping away. You'd be surprised. And I think that's the reality of it's way easier to keep a ball spinning than to have to get it start spinning, if that makes sense. It's so hard to it's easier to stay in shape than to get back in shape.
Yeah, for sure. Exhibit A. Like, I stopped running for, I think it was 2 months. I couldn't run because it was just really painful, and I found that it was extremely hard to get back into it. But now I'm at a point where I'm slowly increasing my mileage for my half marathon block, and my body's adapting to the training, and I can withstand, now suddenly like 30-kilometer weeks. And if you would have told me to do that right after I got
Mhm.
recovered from my injury, there was no way I could have done that. So it just takes time. Your body is smart. Like it will get back to where it was. It's just like muscle memory too, right? Like you get back into the gym if you haven't worked out for a while, you will build that muscle back.
And
It
I
just takes
also
time.
I also want to say, like, to anyone who's getting injured, I don't want you to be scared as well, because you don't just lose your fitness like overnight. And there's a lot of things that you can do low impact. And
Yeah.
it's made a huge difference in my ability to train. And I've had within the last year, as I've kind of had to figure out what I can sustain on a weekly basis in a healthy way, I've had to like pull back from these moments where I was very close to feeling like I was going to get injured. And I was dealing with a lot of pain, whether it was in my hip or in my hamstrings or in my knees or anything to do with like lower body running injuries, shin splints. Like I've felt flare ups within the last year and pretty much every single thing. The only thing, knock on wood, I haven't had to deal with in a while is the plantar fasciitis. I haven't had to deal with that since I played soccer, which I think was from just wearing no cushion under my feet. It was just too much.
Yeah, so I think I've always had that because I worked in the hospitality industry for 6 years, so I was always on my feet, not wearing the most supportive shoes. And then I think that's how it kind of got linked to my ankle injury. It was because I had this plantar fasciitis. It kind of just was linked to that ligament in my ankle, and it just kind of just got strained completely. So I think everything is connected. You kind of just
Right.
need to remember that. A lot of people come like that. I coach at the gym tell me they like have back pain or whatever, and they don't realize that it's probably because they're sitting at their desk all day and their hips are tight and their glutes are tight, and that's what's making their back hurt, right? And they just say, "Oh no, no, it's just my back." Well, I don't know if it's just your back.
Literally.
Yeah.
And then they do something crazy. Like everyone does this where like you don't realize something is like hindering you, and then you try and lift something way too heavy, and then you're like, oh, it's because of that. Well, it's actually because of a lot of things that led up to that. But yeah, I think this is a good transition into what I came today with, which is 5 things that make a great coach. And I want to list them off, and then I want you to kind of tell me if you agree or what you think about these 5 things. Does that sound
Mm-hmm.
good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So the first thing I have today for what makes a great coach is to keep an athlete or a client healthy and ready to compete or ready to progress. So the first thing, the number one priority in my eyes as a coach is to keep an athlete or a client healthy and prevent injury. It's the
Yeah.
number one thing. And the reason I say that is, like I had just said, it is so much easier to stay in shape or to maintain fitness than if you have a setback or an injury, because you have to then work all the way back through all the progressions because you have a weak link in your armor. And I've kind of talked about this a long time ago, but
Chink.
a chink in your armor will be always the first thing to give you an issue in a training program or a training block. And what I mean by that is if you notoriously have a bad back or a bad ankle or a bad knee or whatever, your chest muscles are likely never going to have an issue. All right. And what I mean by that is like, it's likely while you ramp up and increase volume and training load and whatever, it's likely going to be that thing that you've always dealt with in the past that's going to be the first thing to feel pain or the inkling that you're going to get injured. And that's going to be the first sign. And so everything needs to be going towards that to ideally prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Tash, like, what do you do to make sure like your ankle or your back, like you've dealt with your back, like what have you done to make sure just for yourself?
Yeah, so it's funny because I used to love lifting heavy weights. I would, try to do heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, and then I did CrossFit for about a year and a half, and that also was a lot of heavy lifting. And I loved it. And I'm just reflecting now to the training I'm doing right now versus back when I was training for a half marathon, but it wasn't really serious because I was just kind of running a few times a week on top of like doing CrossFit and weightlifting. But back then, I had so many back problems. Like I spent a lot of money to go see a chiropractor to get like active release therapy to like fix, these issues that I've had. And ever since I've stopped heavy lifting, don't get me wrong, I can still lift heavy, whatever you want to call heavy, in my opinion. However, I'm not doing like 1 rep maxes anymore because I've noticed my body, it feels young again, which I haven't felt like that in literally probably over 5 years. And I don't know, it's quite interesting because everyone always says, yeah, progressive overload, blah, 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 blah. And like you get to a point where you either start like powerlifting or you just like keep lifting whatever somewhat heavy. And then maybe you start introducing new goals, which is kind of what happened to me, right? So like I did CrossFit for a while. I still was lifting pretty heavy, squatting pretty heavy, which is still important, but I'm not going anywhere near my like 1 rep max or anything like that, and I'm finding that my back doesn't hurt anymore, my knees don't hurt anymore, like literally nothing, and my body can run and recover. And it's so weird because my back, like I used to have to do like a specific mobility stuff, like stuff to before my workout, and my back would be so, I don't know what the right word is for this, but I would have to crack it. Like lay on my back, do that like twisting pretzel stretch and like crack both sides. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
For the last year and a half or so, since I've not been lifting heavy, I've had little to no back issues, which is crazy. So,
Yeah.
knock on wood, I'm hoping it'll stay the same way. And I think it's because I'm just not pushing to that extent anymore because I don't need to. Like my goals have changed and I feel healthier because of it. So you need to just understand what you want out of your fitness journey. If you want to lift heavy, go for it. But if
Mhm.
it's causing you like crippling back pain, maybe that's a sign that you should maybe stop doing that and start introducing something else, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a similar experience. Like I kind of was in rowing, so I was in endurance training for 4 years, kind of leading into now the stuff I do, which is like the high rocks and running races, which we still emphasized a lot of strength training in our programs, and the things that we were doing, I definitely wouldn't do now knowing what I know. But what's interesting is because of the training volume and load that I had done for 4 years and the mental places that I would go to like put my body on the line, I had run my body and worn it down so much that when I went and got my blood work done, my cortisol levels were absolute in the dog shit cortisol levels.
Like
And what
high,
like super low,
low.
no, no, super high
Yeah,
cortisol.
high,
Yeah,
high.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and what I mean by this is like the reason I was feeling just so low energy and like not my mental ability to just like have energy to do workouts and like endure was very difficult. And what I've noticed now is my relationship with training is completely shifted. And I've also realized how this ability to do more intentional training versus doing just following a program until I just like kind of bulldoze my way through it. It doesn't have to be that way. And I really believe that because I've been able to achieve and continue to progress with doing less than I used to.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so frustrating for a lot of people is they are either a part of a program that is actually burning them out, or they think that they have to do that amount of work to achieve a result, and it's just not the case. So anyway, that was kind of a long-winded way of getting away from how the most important thing is to stay healthy as an athlete, and you need to have that conversation with your coach based on your prior injuries and niggles and understanding your body to then best set you up for success. Because yeah, you could go to a marathon coach and they're going to be like, okay, you need to run 80 Ks, 90 Ks, 100 Ks to hit that goal. I'll tell you right now, I don't believe in that. I have seen effective plans, effective programs where you substitute a ton of running volume for low impact volume on the bike, the Stairmaster, the elliptical, you name it, and you can get through a plan much safer and usually a lot happier because you're not fighting like pain, and that's not what you want. The second thing that I have written down, what makes a great coach is communicating the technique and the intensity to execute the workout. So I think what I've noticed recently is there's a lot of people who don't realize that they don't ever really need to go balls to the wall. And Tash, you used to be one of those people. Every
Mhm.
hard workout was how could I absolutely flog myself into the grave and be laying trying to desperately suck air, right? And don't get me
Well, yeah,
wrong.
but that's because in CrossFit, that's kind of what they want you to do. So I kind of, like, took that into everything else, but, like, now that I'm actually getting coached by someone else, I'm understanding the and realizing that, yeah, easy days should be easy, hard days should be hard, but you also don't need 5 hard days a week. You need 1 or 2.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And if you're not a strength athlete that's like focusing on progressing your strength at that moment in your block, then most of your strength training should be more maintenance strength. And you should know, like, there's certain levels to which strength is beneficial, and there's certain levels to which it's actually unnecessary. And you can look at the highest level. There's a guy, Dylan Scott, who does high rocks, okay, and use this as a great example. He's 165 pounds, okay, 165 pounds. The guy can probably back squat like maybe 225 pounds, right? Like barely. Like he's not strong at all in the grand scheme of things, but he's like one of the top 3 in the world. Okay. And so now you're like, okay, well, he is a really good runner. He's elite level runner. But I think people get so caught in the weeds of not understanding like what's important for the sport. And ultimately, I think you should work at the low hanging fruit before you go for something that's like very minuscule. So for most people, it's getting faster, more efficiently, doing the speed work and everything properly, and building up into your best version of your ability. The third thing is to inspire and cultivate a positive mindset. Okay. This is the most important aspect in showing up consistently, in going in the ability to do this for a long time. If you aren't positive and if you aren't excited to do the work you're going to be doing, you're never going to stick with it. And
Yeah.
I think as a coach, that is the most important thing that gets neglected, is understanding how much influence you have in being able to inspire people. And I use this parable to Tash the other day, which is, as a coach, we receive a lot of information. You learn a lot of information online. And what this great coach said, Dan Paff, is to keep a lake clean, you need to have equal inflow and equal outflow. And if there's not equal outflow, the lake is going to get dirty. And a lot of people have a lot of dirty lakes. And what I mean by that is they take a lot of information in and they don't spread and share the knowledge or the information, and they don't inspire athletes to do great things. And they do a lot more, they do a lot less than what they could because they think they might have secrets, or they're trying to only specifically help their these few athletes. So as a coach, I really think that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
The fourth thing is to develop a training program with blocks that prepare the athlete for the demands of the competition or the race. So at the end of the day, a coach is going to be building out a program that is going to get you ready for that specific event. And this is the specificity side of coaching. is the training that you're doing needs to be working towards a specific goal and get you ready for that. So if you're about to do a marathon, you're not doing 200-meter repeats because it's not at all the same system, right? And I mean specifically like marathon pace versus what you could run an all out 200 by. So make sure that the training that you're doing is closely related to the type of zone you're going to be in or the speed that you're operating in. And I think with high rocks, what I've had to work with a lot of people about recently is pacing high rocks like they pace running. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when they enter the sled push or when they enter the burpees, they go way faster than how they
Yeah.
finish. And if you don't realize that you should be consistent through the entire station, and instead of doing 10 burpees so quick and then resting 30 seconds, you should just kind of find that pace that you can hold a zone 3, zone 4 heart rate and not blow up. And that's the thing is like if you can avoid blowing up in a high rocks because you just pace the stations properly, then you're going to be a lot more effective. And like Tasha, have you experienced that exact thing?
Yeah, of course I
Like
have.
like every time?
Like,
Like
every
every
time because, like, I don't know, when you're racing, you just think that you need to go faster than you do. So, I have a good time with, like, the ergs, and I feel like I can be steady, but then when it comes to burpees, I'm, like, looking at my watch, and I'm like, "Oh, I need to make up some time," so then maybe I went a little too fast and bonked. But it's not even that. I think, honestly, I went too fast just on the first run right off the bat, and that just kinda sets you up to use the wrong energy system and just go way too hard or way too fast, and
Yeah.
then that can negatively impact the rest of your race. So,
Especially mentally, because your body on a chemical level is getting flooded with all this lactate because your anaerobic system is working, and then your slow twitch muscle fibers can't can't use that lactate quick enough, and so you feel burning quicker, you feel mentally like it's harder quicker, and all these things hit you so much harder that
so I think that's
then
what
you're
I've
yeah,
struggled with the most in the past is just the mental side of it. I pushed too hard too soon, and then I just get flooded with these feelings of, "Oh my god, this is really hard,"
right,
and it shouldn't feel that way necessarily,
right.
if that makes
And
sense.
I think the best way to get prepared for things like that is if you really, really internalize, and I worked with Ollie when he went sub 60 on this, is at the end of the day, when you get lost in the race element of high rocks, you end up in a place that you're not familiar with and you're likely in a dangerous position. And your body and checking in with your body while you're doing a race is probably the most important thing. And your body knows the pace that it can withstand for a certain duration. And so that's the most important thing is like when I went out in Singapore, like I was just trying to find this flow. But if I was trying to keep up with somebody that I wasn't actually the same fitness, like apples to apples, the same fitness, which no one is in high rocks, by the way. Like some people are naturally going to be just working a little bit harder. And what I mean by this is it's easy to compare a better athlete to a worse athlete and be like, okay, they're not even on the same level. Okay. You take two athletes that are going to finish at identical times, two people who are going to finish in 60 minutes at high rocks. Okay. A really solid time. Okay. One athlete does burpees 30 seconds faster. One does sled pull 30 seconds faster. But on the race day, they do burpees head to head, right? So they leave the burpees head to head. One guy has 30 seconds more of fitness in a sense, right? He's 30 seconds of burpees fitter than the other guy. He's going to then attack that next part of the race because he kind of conserved a little or made the other guy extend. And the other guy is going to be in a much worse position than if he had just kind of went a little bit more controlled. All right. And use that 30 seconds maybe on the lunges where he was 30 seconds faster as an example in a race. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is like, even if you are at the same speed, that everyone races differently. So don't try and hang with someone else unless you're like really trying to use that as like a mental push at the end of a race. But I really think it's a dangerous thing in high rocks.
Yeah. Run your own race. I feel like that's what we've all kind of come to the conclusion of.
And then
It's
the
your
last,
own race. Sorry.
the last key that makes a great coach is a process oriented mindset that can handle pressure, choking, injuries, setbacks, and challenges. And a lot of coaches, this is more the psychology side of racing. A lot of coaches don't realize how important this side of things are. And what I mean by that is it takes experience to learn the ins and outs of handling pressure and like a position where you could choke or injury, or like it takes a lot of experience. And one of the best things I heard about choking was when I was in my year after high school. I went to this all boys school in Maine, and we would do this little dorm game where we would shoot a plastic water bottle into a garbage can. All right. And the entire, like, there was like 16 of us in this little dorm. We would line up. It was called the Jilson Shootout. And we would basically, like, there would be two water bottles. And if the person before you made it, just like a game of bump, then you would be out. And the quarterback of the football team missed a shot under like a ton of pressure, which in the grand scheme of things wasn't a crazy amount of pressure, but just hang with me. And everyone was like yelling at him, like, "Oh, you choked, you choked, you choked." And he looked at me and he says, "I don't ever choke. I don't ever choke. I take the best possible shot with what I have. And if I miss, then I miss." And so what you realize is choking is an overthinking of a movement pattern or a process that you then get in your own head about your ability to execute that. And if you are undoubtedly confident in knowing that you can do something and that there's a chance that you will miss, right? Whether it's shooting a 3-pointer, whether it's hitting the wall ball target, it doesn't matter what it is. If you do your best and you're confident in that ability, then there is no choking. There literally is no choking. You just missed, and that was the result. And you leave, and you're not, "Oh, I fucking choked." Like it was just you always execute at your best, and that's all you have. That's all you can do.
Yeah, it all comes down to just belief in the end of it, right?
Right.
Belief in yourself and a belief in your abilities. And this is one thing that when I started getting coached by you, I made it very clear. I was like, I only want to get coached by someone who will actually believe in me and my abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you pay for a coach, someone, whatever, for high rocks, whatever. And deep down, they know that you're not gonna do very well. But they just entertain the fact anyway. That is just the most unbelievable thing, in my opinion. Like, I feel like it should come down to the coach. A good coach should know when to say no to someone. Like, if you don't believe in that person, you shouldn't be coaching them,
Mm,
right? Not for the money, not for anything. Like, if it comes to that, you shouldn't be coaching them. If someone is, slacking off consistently, time after time again, not completing their sessions, and you are trying to help them, they're not doing it,
right.
you might need to just say, listen, this isn't working. Like, this is not working. And I'm trying my best to, help you reach your goal. And I really want to believe in you, but maybe something deeper down is happening with you. And it might not work out kind of thing, right?
Right.
And I feel like belief is the thing that we really need to be focusing on as coaches. Um, Not only to just help the athlete, but even as a coach myself, like that makes me happy too, seeing someone succeed. And if someone is obviously not doing their best, then, you
Mhm.
know, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that's kind of my outlook on it, but
I agree. And what I think the key to this all is like if you love the process so much, then when you get to the game or the moment, it's the training has prepared you so well enough that it's like what did I expect? Like this is what I expected. There's no surprises. And I think the key with a great coach is when you are in the moment where you need to perform, there is no surprises. And if there is a surprise, you've prepared for even if there is a surprise. Okay.
yeah.
So when something goes wrong, you've already mentally prepared and rehearsed what happens when it goes wrong. When the judge no reps you, when you get penalized for 30 seconds and it's the second station, when you trip on the sled rope because the sled rope is coiled up in the wrong way. All right. When the sled is heavier because Hyrox doesn't know how to make sleds that are the same on the bottom. Okay. Like if you are rattled, if at the end of the day you're rattled by that, you've already lost.
Yeah.
You've already lost, okay? In life. In life, you've probably lost because you're so worried about the minutia.
Minutia.
The minutia. You're so lost in the minutia that you actually have lost what matters, which is just doing your best. Effort, all right? Effort is what you can control. And like that's all you can do. Your effort and your intensity. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's good to have kind of things that are external that can kind of push you to another level. And I've talked to Tash before about this is if you have like something that you could tap into at the end of a race to like really motivate you uh, by like tricking yourself into an outcome like oh if I go unbroken or if I do this in 3 sets like I'd win $10,000.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to do that because you have to then internally believe it to that point. Like if you don't believe it, I just think that's what's amazing is people don't realize how powerful the mind is, what you can do and what you can tap into if there is something that is so great that you would be willing to sacrifice more than you've ever sacrificed ever. And Tash is thinking about that right now. Is
The
what
wa
sacrifices
the wall balls
are you willing to
every
sacrifice?
time. The wall balls every time. I go to the darkest place I've ever been in my mind. I've never
Uh,
experienced that in any other circumstance in life. I've never felt that darkness.
it's like an anger and wave of darkness that you're like, I'd rather do anything but this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and I think this is a great kind of connection to having a great relationship with your weaknesses. And I was talking to somebody about this today about it's so easy for people to be to not work on their weaknesses because naturally they feel like they live in this world where they're not good at it naturally. So, of course, you're going to want to keep doing your strengths because you're going to get praised for it. You're going to be noticed for it, and it's easy to ignore the things that you're weak at, and it's easy to also have a negative relationship in your mind. And so, what I think I've realized is you need to then break that down. You have to break down a fear because that's what it is a fear when you go into wall balls and you have like this mental darkness come over you or whatever it is, whatever station or sport or whatever it is,
Yeah.
if you have this mental darkness come over, then you need to break it down into smaller chunks at lighter weights and build confidence in that ability to do it well. And so if you can have confidence in knowing that you can then build it back up, that is the strength that you have versus going into every hard session and then afterwards grabbing the men's or women's pro weight wall ball and hucking it up and getting to 20 reps and thinking I fucking suck at this. I'm never going to do
Yeah.
this well. Like, okay, grab the lighter, grab a 2 kilo wall ball. Grab the 2 kilo wall ball and do 100 of those, right? Or do 100 just unbroken squats, body weight squats. It,
That's what it comes down to at the end of it. You need to be able to do 100 unbroken squats and 100 unbroken shoulder press with the ball.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. So those are the 5 key elements. I'm sure there's others that people could convince me or Tash on, but I think as coaches, you need to remember like what's the priority and what are the specific things that you're working towards with your athletes or with your members. I always call them athletes because I think everyone's an athlete. I think we live in this world where you finish playing high school sports or college sports or wherever you finished and you just somehow become a normal person. No, everyone is an athlete. Okay. Everyone can train like an athlete. And that's the kind of stuff that we do for training. Um, and, and yeah, that's the way I see it. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of bad coaches ultimately that make people quit or give up or lose hope or lose motivation because of not doing the exact things that make a great coach. And I've had a lot of bad coaches in my life. I've had a lot of great coaches, but I think it's easy to get burnt out, have a high risk of injury, and it's easy to have closed off mindsets and pick favorites and make excuses. But what do you want to be remembered as is the most important thing that you ask yourself if you're a coach. What do you want to be remembered as? And how do you want to show up for your people every single day?
Yeah. Well said. I also want to just leave you guys with this as well for free speed. It's that if you're a coach, the moment that you think you know everything is the moment that you stop helping people. I feel like you always need to be going into things with an open mind and willing to learn new things. Even as coaches ourselves, we have coaches because we don't think that we know everything. And that was a kind of a hard decision to make. But, sometimes you need to understand that there are people that know more than you. and will help you reach your goal in a more efficient way. And once you start to understand that, then you will learn along the way as well, if that makes sense. So yeah, the moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop helping people.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
yeah.
I agree. Always keep learning, and I always want to be surrounded by people who are learning, and that's the whole reason we created the Free Speed, is to be surrounded by people just like that. So anyway, thanks for listening to today's episode of the Free Speed Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Yep. See you guys next time.